On my 28th birthday, my phone stayed silent. No call from my mom, no quick text from my dad, not even a lazy Facebook post from my family. Just another workday in Manhattan, another reminder that in my parents' eyes, I was the responsible one who didn't need attention, praise, or apparently a happy birthday. By lunchtime, I'd watched my little brother get tagged in a throwback post from my mom about how proud she was of her golden boy. And I realized something ugly. They had ignored my birthday again. The first time it happened, I made excuses for them. Busy, distracted. This time, I was done. I walked out of my office, bonus freshly deposited, and made a decision I knew they wouldn't be able to scroll past. A few hours later, I was standing in front of a brand new Porsche. The kind of car my parents always said was for rich, irresponsible people who didn't understand money. $95,000 of gleaming silver revenge. That night, I parked it in a spot with the city lights behind me, took a photo, and posted it on Facebook with a simple caption about treating myself for my 28th. Within minutes, the likes and comments poured in from friends, coworkers, old classmates congratulating me. From my parents' side of the family feed, there was silence for about 3 hours. Then my phone lit up with my dad's name. His voice didn't sound proud. It sounded furious. Where did you get the money for that car? Do you have any idea how reckless this looks? Family meeting tomorrow, 7:00 p.m. They thought this was about my spending. They had no idea I had been quietly tracking every dollar they funneled into my brother's fake success for years. If you think buying a $95,000 Porsche to get back at your parents sounds insane, wait until you hear what that family meeting turned into and how much their favoritism really ended up costing them. To understand why that phone call hit such a nerve, you have to go back to the last Thanksgiving we spent together. I was 27, working insane hours as a senior financial analyst in Manhattan, making more than my parents ever had. And still, somehow I was the boring, stable one in the family. The star of the show was my little brother, Ethan, 26, the so-called visionary behind a wellness app that, as far as I could tell, existed mostly as mood boards and buzzwords on his LinkedIn. That night, we were all around the dining table, my mom proudly bringing out her turkey, my dad pouring wine, and Ethan walking in with a small 3D printed model and a pitch ready like he was on a startup show. He put this weird plastic sculpture in the middle of the table and called it a representation of balance between tech and mental health. My dad slapped him on the back and said, "Son, this is the future. This is what we should be investing in." My mom snapped pictures from every angle and sent them to the family group chat with a caption about how proud she was of her brilliant founder son. When I tried to share that I had just finished a risk analysis on a $500 million fund that kept my firm from losing millions in a volatile market, my parents nodded politely, asked if office work was tiring, and moved right back to talking about Ethan's vision. That was the first time I felt how deep the favoritism really went. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that adults would eventually care about actual results instead of flashy ideas. But the numbers started bothering me. Ethan was supposedly running a promising startup, working out of a fancy co-working space in Brooklyn, flying to conferences, paying for marketing, but he had no investors, no real customers, and somehow never seemed stressed about rent. A few months later, at a networking event in Midtown, I was chatting with a VC named Marcus when Ethan's accelerator came up. I mentioned it casually, expecting praise about how exclusive it was. Marcus laughed into his latte and said, "Oh, that place. It is basically a vanity accelerator. Startups pay through the nose to sit in pretty offices and post pictures that look successful. They brag about mentors and demo days. But almost no one raises real money." I remember my stomach dropping while I kept my face neutral. On my way home that night, I replayed every time my parents had called Ethan a genius and talked about how they were supporting his dream. If he was paying for that accelerator out of pocket, he was burning money. If he was not, someone else was. As a finance person, I do not ignore patterns. Around that time, my dad had asked me to help him switch some of their accounts to online statements because the paper clutter stressed my mom out. That meant I knew exactly which bank he used and how their transfers showed up. I did not need passwords to put together a picture. I watched amounts and timing. I noticed regular transfers hitting Ethan's account on the first of every month. Always the same weird number, $2,200. That felt specific, not random. I built a spreadsheet, because of course I did. $200 every month for 24 months. $52,800 in total, just in direct transfers labeled living support and business expenses. Then there was what Ethan bragged about publicly. He posted about his apartment in Brooklyn Heights, the wellness founder lifestyle, the marketing campaigns, the conferences. I did some back-of-the-envelope math on rent in his area, the accelerator fee Marcus mentioned, the trips he took. Roughly $92,000 of family money had gone into this dream in 3 years. 92,000 portanto an app that from what I could see had made 1,000 in total revenue and no paying users beyond a couple of friends. Meanwhile, 2 years earlier, when I had asked to borrow $20,000 for a down payment on a small apartment in Queens, my parents had told me it was better for my character if I did it alone. They said I was the responsible one, that I didn't need help. I took that, swallowed the hurt, and worked 60-hour weeks until I could afford that down payment myself. Seeing those transfers laid out in neat rows on my screen was like being punched in the chest in slow motion. They had not just forgotten my birthday, they had built an entire financial system around my brother's fantasy and left me completely out of the equation. I did not explode. I did what I always do. I collected data. I documented everything. I built a quiet, airtight case in a folder on my laptop. By the time I bought that Porsche and my dad demanded a family meeting, I already knew exactly how deep their favoritism ran and exactly how much it had cost. The crazy part is the plan to buy the Porsche did not start from some impulsive fantasy. It started like everything else in my life does, with a spreadsheet and a number on my pay stub. 2 weeks before that Facebook post, the bonus from the $500 million fund I had helped save finally hit my account. $80,000 after taxes, after deductions, still more than my parents' annual income when I was a kid. I remember staring at the number on my screen in my Manhattan apartment, feeling this weird mix of pride and bitterness. I had done this. No one had co-signed. No one had floated me. No one had believed in me the way they believed in Ethan. And yet, here I was, the one person in the family who could drop 5 figures without asking anyone for help. The day after my silent birthday, I met my coworker and unofficial mentor, Lisa, at a small coffee shop near Wall Street. Lisa is one of those women who looks like she stepped out of a finance magazine feature. Sharp blazer, sharper eyes, immigrant parents, zero tolerance for nonsense. She had been the first person I ever told about the bank transfers, the accelerator, the $92,000 hole my parents had dug to keep my brother's dream on life support. When I told her they had forgotten my birthday again while wiring him another monthly transfer, she set her coffee down and just stared at me for a second. So, let me get this straight. She said, they refused to lend you $20,000 for a real asset, but have sent over $90,000 to subsidize a fake founder lifestyle and a vanity accelerator. And now they are mad that you bought a car with your own bonus. When she put it that way, it sounded insane. I laughed, but it was that tight, angry kind of laugh that does not feel good. I do not want to just yell at them, I said. Yelling never works. They just call me dramatic and go back to worshipping him. I want them to actually see it. Lisa nodded slowly like she was weighing a trade. Then make sure they cannot ignore you. Something visible, something they cannot explain away as luck or coincidence. She leaned in. You know what rich, irresponsible people who do not understand money buy, according to your parents, a Porsche. The word landed in my chest like a challenge. It was stupid and symbolic and completely logical at the same time. We pulled up some dealer apps, checked my credit, ran numbers like we were modeling a new portfolio. I could pay off my existing small car loan, put $60,000 or $65,000 down, finance the rest at a low rate, and my monthly payment would still be comfortable on my salary. It would be a flex, but not a reckless one. By the time we finished our second coffees, we had an appointment at a dealership in Long Island. The salesman there looked almost surprised when I handed over my income verification and credit history. He kept glancing between the numbers and me, like he was trying to reconcile the Porsche stereotype with the woman in front of him, who had a binder full of questions about residual values and interest rates. When he asked what had brought me in, I smiled and said, my family thinks only my brother's fantasies are worth investing in. I decided it was time to put some money into my own reality. The Porsche Macan S they showed me was ridiculous in the best way. Silver metallic leather interior that still smelled like a factory. 400 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. I ran my hands along the steering wheel and felt something settle inside me. I put $65,000 down on the spot, structured the rest with a low-interest loan, and watched the salesman try not to look impressed as I signed. While I was finishing paperwork, Lisa was on her laptop in the waiting area, digging deeper into Ethan's accelerator. She found complaints on obscure forums from other founders, whispers about aggressive fees, misleading promises, refund refusals. By the time I drove off the lot, she had drafted the outline of a formal complaint to the New York Attorney General and the Department of Consumer Protection. "You are not just buying a car," she told me when I pulled up to the curb to pick her up. "You are drawing a line. They built a fantasy on your parents' money. You built a career with nobody's help. Now you are going to park that difference right where they cannot pretend not to see it." As I merged onto the highway back toward the city, the skyline came into view through the windshield of my brand new $95,000 Porsche. And for the first time, I felt like I was not just reacting to their favoritism. I was setting the terms. The car was more than a toy. It was the loudest, shiniest financial statement I had ever made, and I knew exactly which audience needed to see it. Lisa and I chose Hudson Yards for the photos because it was New York in one frame, glass towers, the High Line, and the skyline stretching behind us like a screensaver of the life I had built with zero family help. The sun was dropping, reflecting off the silver of the Porsche. And for once, I did not feel like I was faking anything. I parked the Macan at an angle that made the badge impossible to miss, stepped out in my work clothes, and leaned against the hood while Lisa backed up with my phone. "Chin up a little," she said. "You did this. Let it show." We took a dozen shots, some serious, some laughing. One where I was looking straight into the camera with this calm "I know exactly what I am doing" expression that did not feel like a pose. That was the one on the screen. It looked like a luxury car ad, except the model was a tired finance girl who had spent years being treated like background noise in her own family. I opened Facebook because that was where my parents actually lived online. Instagram felt too young for them. I started typing a caption, backspaced 3 times, then settled on the truth without the drama. "Happy 28th birthday to me," I wrote. "Closed out a major fund at work this quarter and used my bonus to buy myself the car I have wanted for years. No sponsors, no investors, just a lot of late nights and spreadsheets." Hit post. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the notification started. Old college friends, coworkers, even my old boss from my first job all piled into the comments. "Proud of you. This is what hard work looks like. That thing is gorgeous." One guy from my department joked about needing a ride to the office now. I smiled at the screen, thinking how strange it was that the people who actually saw my effort every day celebrated me more than the people who raised me. I checked the list of viewers. My mom had seen the post. So had my dad. No likes, no comment, no call. Lisa glanced over my shoulder. "Give them time," she said dryly. "They are probably doing the math." We went back to my place, ordered takeout, and while I half-watched a show, Lisa sat at my kitchen table, tightening up the complaint against Ethan's accelerator, adding dates and dollar amounts I had pulled together. When she finally hit submit to the state site, she turned her laptop toward me like a tiny ceremony. "Paper trail begun," she said. "Now we see what they do with it." It was almost midnight when my phone lit up with my dad's name. I felt my chest tighten, not because I was scared, but because I already knew exactly how this was going to sound. I put it on speaker and set it on the table so Lisa could hear. "Emily," he said, not bothering with hello. "Where did you get the money for that car?" His tone was not curious. It was accusatory, like I had been caught stealing. "From my job," I said calmly. "From the bonus I told you about 3 times that you changed the subject on. It is financed responsibly. I ran numbers for weeks." My mom cut in from the background, her voice high and sharp. "A $95,000 car is not responsible, Emily. Cars lose value the second you drive them off the lot. This is impulsive. This is what people who do not understand money do." I stared at the Porsche keys on my counter and felt something in me harden. Less impulsive, I said slowly, then sending $92,000 over 3 years to prop up a startup that makes $1,000 a year in revenue. There was a long silence. I could practically hear them replaying my words, trying to figure out how I knew that number. My dad cleared his throat. "We are not talking about your brother right now," he snapped. "We are talking about you, about the example you are setting. You cannot just make huge purchases without consulting your family." That line almost made me laugh. "I am 28. I said, I live alone. I pay my own bills. You do not get consulted on my financial decisions. You never have unless it was to tell me no." Another beat of silence. Then my dad shifted into his control voice, the one he used when I was a teenager. "Family meeting," he said. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Your mother and I want you here." "This is serious, Emily." I met Lisa's eyes. She raised her brows like, "There it is." I kept my voice even. "Fine," I said. "I will be there. But if we are going to talk about money, we are going to talk about all of it." When I hung up, my hands were steady. There was no shaking, no second guessing. Outside my window, my $95,000 Porsche sat under the streetlight like a quiet dare. They thought they were dragging me in to scold me for being irresponsible. They had no idea I was walking into that house with a years-long financial autopsy of their favoritism in my bag. The next evening, I pulled into my parents' driveway 10 minutes early. The Porsche engine purring low as I shut it off. Snorts, their house in New Jersey looked exactly the same as it had my whole life. Neat lawn, wreath on the door, the kind of place people point at and say, "That looks like a nice stable family." I sat for a second with my hands on the wheel, feeling the weight of the folder in my bag. Numbers, transfers, screenshots, a printout of my spreadsheet, facts, evidence. I rang the bell and my mom opened the door with that tight smile she uses when she wants to pretend everything is fine. "You made good time," she said, eyes flicking past me to the driveway. She saw the Porsche. Her smile faltered, then snapped back into place. Inside, my dad was standing by the fireplace like he was about to give a speech, arms crossed, jaw set. Ethan was on the couch, looking like he hadn't slept. I dropped my bag by the chair and sat down, waiting for them to start. My dad did not waste time. "Emily," he said, "this car situation is completely out of control. We raised you to be responsible. Buying a $95,000 vehicle on a whim is not responsible." I let that land. Then asked, "Who told you it was on a whim?" I showed him the folder. I had been researching this purchase for months. I ran scenarios. I checked depreciation curves. I compared interest rates. This isn't a TikTok impulse buy. My mom frowned, hugging her arms around herself. "We are just worried." She said, "This is not like you. You are supposed to be the sensible one. People are going to see this online and think you are reckless or in some kind of trouble." Behind her, Ethan shifted uncomfortably. He cleared his throat. "Speaking of trouble," he said. There was a weird tone in his voice. "Some investigator called me about the accelerator, about my business. They had all these numbers, fees, names of other founders." He looked at me like he already knew. "Did you do something, Emily?" My dad turned on me, eyes narrowing. "Did you talk to someone about your brother's program?" He demanded. "This is his career. We have invested time and money in his future. You do not get to sabotage that because you are feeling insecure." There it was. Sabotage. Insecure. The script they always pulled out when I dared to question the golden child narrative. I took a breath and opened the folder, spreading the papers out on the coffee table like cards. "I did not sabotage anything," I said. "I reported a predatory business model that has been draining this family for years, and I am done pretending I don't see the numbers." My mom's hand flew to her mouth when she saw the bank logos. My dad leaned forward, squinting. "What is this?" I pointed to the first page, a simple chart. "This is a breakdown of the transfers you have been sending Ethan for the last 2 years, I said, keeping my voice level. $2,200 on the first of every month, labeled living support and business expenses. 24 months. That alone is $52,800. My dad sputtered. We help him with cost of living, he said. Rent is expensive. Growing a business is expensive. That is what parents do. They support their kids' dreams. I slid the next page forward, the one where I had added lines for rent in Brooklyn Heights. Estimated accelerator fees at $2,000 a month. Travel marketing. Sure, I said. So, let's look at what that support actually adds up to. Between the direct transfers and what you have told me you have covered over the phone, you are at roughly $92,000 over 3 years. 92,000 into startup maybe. 1,000 in actual revenue from what I can see. My mom shook her head like she could just dislodge the information. That cannot be right, she whispered. We do not have that kind of money to throw around. Exactly. I said quietly. You don't. But you did it anyway. For him. I flipped to the last page, the one that hurt me most to even look at. 2 years ago, I asked to borrow $20,000 for a down payment on a condo in Queens. A real investment, a place to live. You told me it would be better for my character if I did it alone. My dad winced. That is not fair, Emily. You were already stable. You had a good job. You didn't need help the way he does. I met his eyes. So stability is punished and irresponsibility is rewarded. That is the lesson. My mom snapped. We are not punishing you. You have always been so independent. You never asked for anything. You didn't need us. He did. I let out a breath that tasted like every birthday card that never came and every dismissive nod at my promotions. I did ask, I said. I asked for that loan and you said no. I called you from the office when my boss offered me the fun project and you changed the subject to Ethan's latest idea. I sent you my promotion email and you replied with a thumbs up and then 10 messages about his demo day. My voice started to shake, not with tears, but with finally saying it out loud. You built an entire financial system around his fantasy and left me to build my reality alone. Ethan slammed his hand on the table, eyes bright with anger and fear. This is not just about money, he shouted. That accelerator gave me connections. Mentors. They told us we were on the verge of a big round before this stupid investigation. You ruined everything because you are jealous. I turned to him. Do you know what a vanity accelerator is, Ethan? They make you pay for the illusion of progress and you dragged mom and dad into it as your personal investors. If anyone ruined anything, it is the people who sold you that dream and the people who refused to look at the fine print. My dad pointed a finger at me. Enough, he barked. You do not talk to your brother like that in this house. This attitude, this resentment, it is exactly why we worry about you suddenly flashing money around. A Porsche, Emily. That is the kind of thing drug dealers and lottery winners buy. Lisa would have laughed at that. I didn't. I stared at my father, at the man who had handed his son almost $100,000 without a real business plan and called my well-researched purchase the reckless one. I bought that car with money I earned in a career you barely acknowledge. I said no one co-signed. No one bailed me out. No one sat at a Thanksgiving table and called me the future. You never even asked what that bonus was for. You just saw a price tag online and decided I must have lost my mind. I gathered the papers back into the folder, stacking them neatly. Here's what is actually reckless, I said. Sending $92,000 to an unprofitable startup while telling your daughter she needs to toughen up and do everything on her own. Ignoring every achievement she has because it does not fit your favorite story. Betting the family's savings on an accelerator that is now under investigation for fraud. The room went very quiet. My mom sank onto the couch. Ethan looked like he might throw up. My dad opened his mouth, then closed it. The way you do when the mouth finally hits. I slung my bag over my shoulder and stood. You wanted to talk about money, I said. We did. Now you know exactly how much your favoritism costs. I am not here to ask you to fix it. I already learned how to survive without your support. I am here to tell you that from now on I am done paying the emotional price for decisions you made. I walked to the door, my mom's voice small behind me. Emily, wait. We can talk about this. We didn't know. I paused just long enough to say, you didn't want to know. There is a difference. Then I stepped outside into the cool night air. The Porsche sat in their driveway, sleek and out of place next to their aging sedan, a shiny, undeniable symbol of the life I had built while they were busy funding a fantasy. As I pulled away, I checked the rear-view mirror and saw them standing in the doorway, framed by the warm light of the house that had never really felt like home to me. For the first time, it felt like the roles had shifted. They were the ones left in the dark, and I was the one finally driving my own story. 2 mornings after that blow-up in my parents' living room, I was back at my desk in Manhattan when Lisa showed up at my office door holding her phone like a verdict. Remember that complaint we filed? She said the state picked it up. Full investigation. She dropped into the chair across from me and started listing it out. The New York Attorney General's office had opened a case on the accelerator, and because some of their locations were technically based in 2 neighboring states, other agencies were now involved. There were already half a dozen other founders who had filed similar complaints once the first notices went out. Hidden fees, false promises about investor introductions, threats when people tried to leave the program. It was worse than we thought. And my brother, the visionary founder, had been one of their favorite poster children, happily posting pictures and tagging them, bragging about his elite network. That afternoon, during a break between meetings, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized as my parents' house. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, my dad called my cell directly. His voice was not furious this time. It was scared. Emily, he said they came to talk to your brother. Investigators, they say he might have to come in again with a lawyer. They say he referred other startups, that he was like an ambassador. They used the word conspiracy. Do you know what kind of trouble he could be in? I closed my eyes for a second, picturing Ethan proudly dragging his friends into that shiny office, telling them it was the big break they had been waiting for. I did. I said that is why I reported it, because this is not just bad luck. It is systemic and you poured almost everything you had into it. There was a long pause. You did this, my dad finally said, his voice breaking a little. If you had a problem, you could have come to us. Instead, you went to the government. They could ruin his life. I felt a spark of anger, cold and clean. You are right, I said. Someone could ruin his life. The people who sold him a lie for $2,000 a month. The people who convinced you to bankroll it while ignoring every red flag. Or the people who refused to listen when I warned you. Do not put this on me because I was the only one willing to say the truth out loud. Another pause, then the inevitable ask. We need to meet again, he said. Tonight, we need to talk about lawyers. Please, Emily, for your brother, for the family. I almost said no on the spot, but a part of me wanted the record to be crystal clear. So, I agreed. That evening, when I walked back into the house, the energy was completely different from the last time. No lectures queued up, no performative anger, just fear. Papers were spread across the dining table, letters from the AG's office, a printout of an email from a white-collar defense firm with a fee estimate circled in red. 52. 70,000. My mom looked 10 years older as she wrung a tissue in her hands. Ethan sat hunched over, eyes red, his hoodie pulled up like it could shield him from reality. My dad gestured for me to sit. We need your help, he said. Skipping the preamble this time. Ethan might need a lawyer. A good one. You are the only one in this family who has that kind of money. We hate to ask, but this is serious. Jail. Serious. My mom sniffed. Please, Emily. Whatever has happened between you two. He is still your brother. You cannot just let him face this alone. I looked at the fee estimate, then at Ethan, then at the 2 people who had written check after check for his dream without ever once asking for a business plan. A week ago, I might have caved, used my savings, told myself it was my duty. Now, the clarity I felt was almost shocking. I am not letting him face it alone, I said. I already did more to protect this family than anyone else in this room. I flagged a scam before it could drag you even deeper under. I tried to warn you. You ignored me. Ethan glared at me, desperate and furious. You turned me in, he said. You destroyed years of work because you were bitter that no one threw you a parade for your spreadsheet job. Do you know how close we were to a big investor? I leaned forward. If an investor was going to come, they would have by now. This was never about one big check. It was about an accelerator milking you dry while using you as a recruiting tool. They did not see you as a genius, Ethan. They saw you as a revenue stream. My dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough blame. He snapped. The reality is he needs a lawyer. We need money. We are asking you as your parents to help your family. You bought a $95,000 car. You clearly have money. You can do this. My chest went tight at the way he framed it, like my success existed primarily as a safety net for their bad bets. I shook my head slowly. I worked for that car, I said. Every dollar. I also worked for the savings I have for my future, for a better place to live, for retirement. I am not going to drain that to bail out a situation you created by refusing to question a fairy tale. My mom whispered, how can you be so cold, Emily? He is your brother. I thought of every time I had been called cold for setting boundaries. Every time my calm made them more uncomfortable than my tears ever did. I am not cold, I said quietly. I am finally done setting myself on fire to keep this family warm. You chose to gamble on an image. You chose to send him money every month instead of helping me with a down payment that would have actually built equity. You chose to ignore me when I pointed out the problems. Those choices have consequences. You do not get to reroute the bill to me now. Ethan sank back, shaking his head. They are going to ruin me, he muttered. I looked at him and for a second I did feel a flicker of sympathy. Not enough to erase everything, but enough to tell the truth. You are not ruined. I said, you are being forced to live in reality for the first time. Get a real job. Pay your own rent. Hire a public defender if you cannot afford a private one. Learn something from this. My dad stood up as if height could change my mind. So that is it. He said, you are just going to walk away. I stood too, my chair scraping softly against the hardwood. No, I said. I walked away a long time ago. You just did not notice until I parked a Porsche in your driveway. I picked up my bag and glanced at the pile of papers on the table. You wanted him to be treated like an adult founder, I added. This is what adulthood looks like. Actions, consequences, accountability. As I left, my mom started to cry in earnest. My dad said my name once, like a question. Ethan stared at the table. Outside, the air felt cooler than it had on my way in. The Porsche started with a low growl, steady and familiar. Driving away this time did not feel like an escape. It felt like the end of a test I had been taking my whole life. One where the answer key had finally been rewritten in my favor. 2 years later, I pulled the same silver Porsche into a different driveway. This time in front of a glass and steel building in downtown Manhattan with my firm's logo on it and my new title etched on my key card. Vice President of Risk and Portfolio Strategy. The girl who once got her achievements brushed off at the Thanksgiving table now sat in rooms where people actually listened when she spoke. I had moved out of my starter condo in Queens into a place that looked out over the East River, paid for with a second, much larger bonus and equity that I had negotiated myself. No cosigners, no quiet resentment, just work and results. The accelerator did not survive the investigation. Within a year of that first complaint, the state forced them to shut down. Their founders were charged with fraud and a handful of other things I do not pretend to fully understand, but I do know they will not be selling false hope to anyone else for a while. The headlines were small, buried in the business section, but I screenshotted them anyway and saved them in the same folder where I had kept my original spreadsheet. A quiet, private reminder that I had been right to trust what the numbers were screaming at me. Ethan did not go to prison, but he did not walk away untouched either. He took a plea deal, ended up on probation for 2 years, mandatory financial education classes, and a requirement to pay back a portion of the money he had taken from a few of the other founders he had recruited. The judge called it a wake-up call. For once, I agreed with some authority figure in his life. He moved out of Brooklyn Heights into a smaller apartment in a less glamorous part of town, and for the first time since college, got a real job. Not founder, not visionary, not CEO of a LinkedIn bio, snorts, just a junior designer at a small marketing agency learning how to take feedback and meet deadlines and show up on time. When my mom talks about him now, she does not use the word genius. She says things like, he is learning or he has a lot of growing up to do. My parents took their own hit. Between the lawyer fees, which ended up right around $68,000, and the money they had already poured into the accelerator years before, their retirement timeline got pushed back hard. My dad picked up part-time consulting work. My mom started watching neighbors' kids in the afternoons for extra cash. They do not brag about their investments at family gatherings anymore. When they talk about money, there is a new caution in their voices that did not exist when they were writing checks to support Ethan's dream. Our relationship did not magically heal when the dust settled. There was no big tearful apology, no hallmark moment where everyone hugs and everything goes back to normal. What changed was quieter. They started asking about my work without immediately pivoting to my brother. My mom began texting me on my birthday before Facebook reminded her. My dad, the man who once called my car a reckless stunt, asked me one day how I had structured my retirement accounts and listened all the way through my answer. I forgave some things slowly and kept other scars as boundaries. I go to dinner once a month. I leave when conversations turn into guilt trips. I do not offer money. I do not co-sign decisions. I am polite, even warm sometimes. But the part of me that used to hope they would suddenly see me the way they saw Ethan is gone. That part has been replaced by something sturdier, a kind of self-respect I wish I had found sooner. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is not that you should buy a $95,000 car to get revenge on your family. Though I will not lie, parking that Porsche in their driveway was satisfying. It is that favoritism is not just about who gets more attention at dinner. It is a pattern of choices that teaches one child they have to be perfect and invisible and teaches the other that the rules do not apply to them. It breaks both of you in different ways. I spent years believing that being the strong one meant I had to accept whatever was handed to me and be grateful I could handle it. It took a spreadsheet, an investigation, and a Porsche to learn that being strong can also mean saying no. No to paying for other people's mistakes. No to shrinking yourself so someone else can feel bigger. No to families who only call it love when you are useful. If you have ever been the invisible child, the one they relied on but never really saw, I hope you hear this clearly. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to walk away from roles that hurt you. And you do not owe anyone, not even your family, your lifetime of emotional and financial labor just because they decided your stability made you less deserving of port.